Welcome to the Alpha Koncepts podcast, where we're going to talk about everything going on in the gun culture, from training to gear and gun rights advocacy. Hi, I'm Thomas Krall, and I'll be your host for today's adventure. And in today's episode, I have Jonathan Burstyn with me, and Jonathan and I are going to talk about. He's an Orthodox Jew, and we're going to talk about things in his group of people and how and why he feels about guns, and also we'll talk about church security, synagogue security, excuse me, and things like that. Jonathan, did I murder your last name?
No, you got it perfect there. It's Burstyn.
Burstyn, thank you, sir. I appreciate you spending the time with me today.
Of course, not a problem. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So, tell me about yourself.
Sure, yeah. So when Illinois passed the law, we're coming on 5 years now of constitutional concealed carry. I, of course, like many Illinoisans, we got my concealed carry permit. And then as the years progressed, I realized that, especially in the Chicagoland area, the non-rural areas of Illinois, there's a real lacking of concealed carry instructors and training and classes that will accommodate the Jewish schedule. What I mean by that is that Orthodox observant Jews are Sabbath observers. Most classes, many classes, are on Saturdays. And as a practicing Jew in my community, we don't do any form of manual labor, such as going in a car on Saturdays. So I researched, looked into, I became an instructor. And I really wanted to bring that to my community, which I have, and I do Jews and non-Jews as well. And since I became an ISP, Illinois State Police Certified Concealed Carry Instructor, I have certified about 170 people within my community, and the response has been very positive. We have people in just about every synagogue virtually in the north side of Chicago, of people that are carrying and doing not just the concealed carry training, but ongoing training on top of it.
So yeah, I learned obviously, said, hey, let's record on Saturday, and you're like, no, I can't do that. So here we are on a Thursday morning. Yeah. I in some ways I'm kind of jealous because I pretty much, if the sun is up and even if the sun is down, I feel like I'm working one way or another.
Yeah, it's a real day to disconnect, reconnect with your family and with yourself.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, in some ways I'm jealous of that. That's not a joke. Let me tell you a real short story. I worked with an Orthodox Jewish guy once, and he was, the kind of guy who he had a couple of microwaves and multiple different plates. And I mean, real devout. He would go to the synagogue, as far as I know, almost every single day. And he liked to talk on the speakerphone. And so, of course, I couldn't help but overhear a conversation he was having with a friend of his, who I presumed also to be a fellow Jew. And he had a concealed carry license, and he was talking about it with his friend. And his friend asked him, what do you think the rabbi would say about it? And he said, well, I'm just not going to tell him. And it just, it struck me as odd, and something I kind of was, that stuck with me. And what are your thoughts on that? Why would the rabbi even care?
I would say because maybe there would be other congregants who wouldn't feel comfortable there being armed members, which sounds like, a paradox almost, contradicting. If anything, you'd feel more safer. But I just know, like in my synagogue, to be on the approved carry list, it's not just having the permit, but it's also undergoing continuous and ongoing training, such as how to deal with a shooter in a crowd, and how to deal with multi-threats and isolate and to communicate and eliminate the threat. That's ICE, isolate, communicate, and eliminate. But I do understand why people will be private about it, because especially in the Chicagoland area, we're a blue city and a blue state, that guns are just frowned upon.
Yeah, they're scary. So he also, same gentleman, he also, and by the way, what you were saying about the ICE and the ongoing training, that is pretty common for a lot of church security teams, and that's not unusual with church security. I wish more, and I apologize. I'm saying church, synagogue, mosque, houses of
All
worship.
houses of
Yeah,
worship.
right,
All
exactly.
houses of worship. I
I
understand that.
yeah, I'm just an ignorant. So, but going back to my old coworker, he and I got to talking, and he said, "Well, I only carry when I go to the synagogue, and I'm the kind of person, I think, carry whenever and wherever legally possible, and avoid anywhere that doesn't allow you to carry. That's kind of my mantra." And but his opinion and his belief was that he's actually more likely to need it at his place of worship, at his synagogue, than anywhere else. And obviously, yes, places of worship are known to be targets for radicals. And that's another one of those things. I like talking with people because when you're having conversations with people that have differences from yourself, you learn new things, and it makes me think about why they feel the way that they feel. And like when he said, "I just won't tell my rabbi," and I thought, why would the rabbi care? And I think you make a very valid point. At the same point in time, I was also thinking about why. Yeah, I tell people, hey, if you feel like you're going to need your gun, don't go there. Avoid the situation if at all possible. But obviously, going to worship is a whole different animal, a whole different beast.
That is correct. Our worship is our oxygen. It's our lifeblood. And if we feel any threatened at all, we will bound up together and be stronger, and we'll be more vigilant. We're coming off of the whole COVID-19 pandemic, where there was restrictions on crowds in synagogues and all houses of worship. So we were eager to get back. But I feel that if we show the community rabbis and the community leaders that we're not just cowboys, but we're real, vigilant, educated, and well-trained, armed members of society, they will be much more receptive and supportive in our mission of making not just synagogues, but all houses of worship a safer and a more welcoming, inviting place.
And I think you hit the nail on the head with that comment, armed members of society, because really, when you look at it, people with concealed carry licenses are no different than people without concealed carry licenses, except that we choose to take our own self-protection in our hands and not rely on anyone else. But we slice the complete demographic pie of all Americans. I mean, there's people of every faiths, there's people of every genders, there's people, you name it, slap whatever label on it that you want, and you can find people in that demographic who have a concealed carry license. So, it's the perception is that, oh, they're crazy, they're deranged, they're bloodthirsty, and now that we've gone into approaching pretty soon our 7th year here with concealed carry in Illinois, I think that perceptions are really starting to change on that, and I hope to see, especially in soft targets like places of worship, I hope to see that a lot of restrictions get loosened up. So that's really good. You hit the nail on the head with that comment. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just limited to the Jewish or Muslim or Christian population, but just it's an individual thing, not a faith-based thing. That if people feel like they want to exercise this constitutional right, in America, our foundation is freedom of religion, and when we are able to practice freely, I mean, you see the anti-Semitism going on in Europe, all over France and the UK. If Americans were able to practice our religion freely, why not extend that freedom towards that Second Amendment, that God-given gift of the Second Amendment in our sacred Constitution? Will just reinforce our sacred Constitution of how the values of America are trickled down from the forefathers to today.
Sure, I agree with that very much. I mean, the way I look at it is you have no freedoms if you don't have a right to bear arms. And no matter where anyone places, certain rights above others, you have no rights if you don't have the ability to defend those rights.
Once the Second Amendment becomes obliterated, it's one step closer for all other amendments to become obsolete.
Correct.
So all the Second Amendment people, we're not all into our guns. We're into preserving the Constitution of the United States. So once you meddle with one thing, it's one step closer of changing and reforming other things.
Right. It makes it a lot easier to impose your will upon an unarmed society.
Yes.
Okay, so let me ask you another question about, you've got the group jfpo, Jews for the Preservation of Firearm Ownership, jpfo, I'm sorry. That's actually the second gun rights advocacy group that I heard of course, after the NRA, which is the one everyone knows of. And, again, struck me as odd. Why would Jews need their own group? Why do you think that is?
Because we can't do events on Saturdays. So just to make things done on Saturdays, but just people would feel much more comfortable and much less vulnerable to a society and part of a group that there are people of dissimilar faiths.
You know what? And
it's not that it's not that we're competing. It's not that we're competing against with the NRA has 5 million members. I mean, there's no way we're competing with that. It's just a little group for us to have our own little game, so to speak, our little ragtag team.
Right, and there's nothing that stops somebody from being a member of both groups, so it's not a competition. I think people need to understand that. Obviously, there's sometimes a little competition going on, and I get that, but there's no reason why someone can't be a member of many groups. I'm a member of many groups. I think it's important to support as many groups as you can, that you feel represent you. Let me rephrase that. It's important to support as many groups that represent you as you can. I believe
there's nothing wrong with having a USCCA and an NRA membership. It's not a contradiction in your beliefs at all.
Well, that's actually interesting. The USCCA is very different in many ways from the NRA. A lot of people will talk about the USCCA as if they're an advocacy group, and they really aren't. They provide training, and that's kind of
insurance.
Insurance. Well, they don't like when you call it insurance, but that for legal reasons they're not insurance, but they're a self-defense service policy, whatever. I mean, but the similarities really end because at the fact that they provide the training, because the NRA is no longer doing the carry guard program, so they're not competing in that realm anymore. They're just really competing on the training. The NRA does the advocacy, and the USCCA does the training and the I'm doing air quotes, the insurance.
Yeah, so it's definitely not a contradiction at all. So
right. If one group is working in a certain avenue and then another group, but they're both working towards the same goal, then if you can, support them both. That's the way I look at it.
More the merrier, yes.
So, how's training been for you in the last few months?
It's been pretty busy. Getting a lot of classes, doing a lot of private groups and offices and families. Obviously, with the social distancing guidelines, March and April we postponed a lot of classes, but since the George Floyd unrest, things have been very busy. There's been a lot of interest, not just within my community, the Jewish community, but around the neighboring communities that I live in as well, Jews and non-Jews.
Yeah, I agree with that. Classes have been pretty busy for me as well. In fact, I've got one class this weekend, and I limit the size of my classes, and I have 4 people on my waiting list right now trying to get in. I got another email this morning.
And it's taking ISP 5-6 months to process the applications. It's ridiculous how long. My February class just got all their permits.
Yeah, we could probably do 2-hour episode just on deficiencies at the Illinois State Police. I mean, that's it's just amazing.
That's a discussion in itself.
So what's the name of your training company? I don't think you mentioned that at the beginning.
It's called Chi-Defense, short for Chicago. It inspired me out of a business acquaintance. He's a contractor, so he's called Chi Construction, and he built me my nice training facility. So I call my place Chi-Defense. You can see me on Facebook there, and I run classes monthly, and I use a local range. And we have a very, very happy and satisfied clientele.
When you first got into concealed carry, well, let me back up before you got into concealed carry. What first got you into firearms?
So I grew up in South Florida, and my father, of blessed memory, he passed away when I was very young, was a volunteer policeman for the city of Miami. And I grew up really around guns. And once I moved to Chicago in '02, I realized it was, we had to give up your love for guns. And then once they passed the concealed carry law, that's when I got it. So I got back into it as the law changed in the state of Illinois. So I did grow up in a home in Florida with firearms.
So you took a break for a little while when you moved to this hellhole.
Yeah, the liberal city of Chicago.
And even liberals are waking up now to gun ownership. I mean, it's obviously, yes. I tell people all the time that statistics matter, right? We can look at statistics and we can say, well, this percentage owns guns and this percentage owns guns. But, I think it was 2 years. Pew Research did a study, and it was like something off the top of my head. I may fudge the numbers, but I think it was like 25% of people who are registered Democrats are also gun owners. Now, I will say there are varying shades of gun ownership. I'm the person who believes that every single gun law is a crime against humanity, because when you understand what the purpose of the Second Amendment is, to defend yourself against tyranny and oppression, to make it harder for someone to do that is, as I said, a crime against humanity. So there's varying shades. I'm at one end of the spectrum, and then there's people that are okay with certain laws. Background checks, for example, is a popular one that even some gun owners support. But I think that as the ranks of gun ownership swells, and we get more people of more different, well, what I'll say, non-stereotypical demographics into the gun culture, then we can be good ambassadors ourselves who have been here for many years, and start to educate them on, instead of hitting them over the head and saying, well, you're an idiot, you support background checks, you're just a dumbass. I think it's better for us to say, well, let me explain to you why maybe that's not the best idea and how that's actually counterproductive. I was talking to someone this morning, you catch more bees with honey than you do with vinegar.
Yes, and it really comes down to the lawmakers and the policymakers of Chicago. Till this day, there's no gun ranges in Chicago, in the city of Chicago limits. And that's probably one of the reasons why there's not that many concealed carry instructors, because you have to travel out pretty far to do the shooting requirements. And whenever a new gun range goes up, the amount of bureaucratic red tape that people have to go through, a lot of people give up in the middle.
Sure.
After getting all their permits, they spend in the seven figures, millions of dollars in just all their legal fees, and they just give up on it.
Sure, absolutely.
It's extremely difficult. And when really it's there to make what you just said, that haphazard gun owner, that 25% of Democrats who just have it, when shit hits the fan, you're robbing them from accessing more convenient training. So whenever a new range goes up, whether it's in Niles or Morton Grove, in the outskirts of Chicago, and you have all these mothers against gun violence protesting about it, they're really just robbing themselves, because I've never seen a gangbanger or a thug at the range taking a private one-on-one with an instructor.
Right. And don't you want look, gun owners are here. We're not going away. And wouldn't you want people to be able to hit their target? Wouldn't you want people to be able to shoot what they want to shoot without shooting someone or something else? I mean, I don't see how having more training or more practice is a bad thing. But
not at all.
But when you make it difficult, like you said, that the gun range in Niles that never opened because they had like a 3 or 4 year court battle, and now the building's for sale. I mean, I was actually in the building when they were doing demo and when they were pouring backstops for the rifle range. I was actually in the building talking to the owner, and that was like 6 years ago.
Yeah, Revolver Range. It was going to be on Lehigh and Howard.
Right. They actually changed their name, but that was the original name that they were going to go with. But right, yeah, exactly. It was, and yeah. So long story short, they got their permits, they started construction, and then, one of the Bloomberg groups out of Skokie, not even the same town, out of Skokie, a town or two over, started filing lawsuit after lawsuit and basically drained their bank account dry with legal fees. And
that's we have to thank Denise Stoneback for that. She's our new state rep of the 16th district.
What was the name?
Denise Stoneback. She defeated the incumbent Yehiel Kalish in this past March's election. If Yehiel Kalish would have been reelected, it would have been a little bit more beneficial. But Denise Stoneback was the one who was the driving force behind the Mothers Against Gun Violence, who kept on going from lawsuit after lawsuit for that new range in Niles over the past 6 years.
Yeah, and the thing is, the argument that they were making is it's going to bring in the wrong element of person. It's like their opinion of us is just incredibly low. And the only thing that makes us different from them is, as I said before, we take our own personal protection seriously. We feel that it's our duty and our responsibility to defend and protect ourselves and our families, and that's it. I mean, that's the only difference, right? So, they, like I said, it's going to bring in the wrong element. It's going to bring in this. It's going to bring in that. Those are the arguments they were making, and obviously, it's just ridiculous. I don't know what they're afraid of. I don't understand why they wouldn't want more people to be trained. It doesn't make any sense. I can't compute the logic in my brain.
What do you mean? All of the cops in front of Lori Lightfoot's house are going to come and protect anybody else who gets robbed. Don't you know that?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I can't afford to pay 30 cops or whatever she has in front of her house to stand in front of mine.
Yeah.
So I have to do it myself.
Telling the left.
So I know, obviously, you can't speak for all Jews. That's a silly thought. But why do you think that you have some of these Jewish politicians like Feinstein and Schumer who are, again, there's things I don't understand, right? And it's like you've got the Holocaust and the call to never forget and the atrocities during and after World War II, not just against the Jewish people in Germany, but all of Europe and other people as well. And why do you think that you have some of these Jewish politicians, and of course not all Jewish politicians are anti-gun, but you've got Schumer and Feinstein who are both incredibly vocal anti-gun, rabidly civilian disarmament advocates. How do you think they can make such a mental disconnect?
Very good question there. You're forgetting Michael Bloomberg as well.
Yeah, how could I forget the top dog? He's the one funding all these people.
Yes, you're forgetting Michael Bloomberg as well. So we need to just understand what the different sects and the segments of Judaism. I am Orthodox, meaning to say I abide by the letter of the laws from our sacred text, which is the Torah. And those that aren't practicing, they don't keep the Shabbat, they don't eat kosher necessarily, they drifted away from what the real practicing and authentic Jews do. So I make a correlation between the authenticity of our nation's constitution and what my religion's sacred scrolls are, which are the Torah. So these Jewish politicians that you mentioned are not Orthodox, like I am and the people in my community. They are they're either reform or conservative, not conservative politically, but conservative in the Jewish religion segment aspect. An individual like Ben Shapiro, okay, he is an Orthodox Jew. He walks out of his house, he wears his head covering, his yarmulke. He is very conservative politically, Orthodox religiously.
Got it.
People like Schumer, Feinstein, and Bloomberg, they are conservative religiously, and they drifted away from the authentic Torah laws of Judaism, and they look at the Constitution as, oh, just like my Judaism, I don't need to abide by it today. The Constitution from yesteryear, the Second Amendment's not applicable today.
Right, yeah. I've heard a lot of calls for abolishing 200-year-old scripts and things like that, and here you are going back thousands and thousands of years. I'm glad you brought up the Torah. That actually is a question I was going to ask you. I've had conversations with some of my Christian friends, and let me just say, you know, I was born and raised Catholic. I'm non-practicing myself now,
All
but
right, we're cousins.
and you know, I've had conversations with with some Christians about the texts in the Bible that, you know, talk to that it's their duty, biblical duty, to defend themselves, and here it is, you know, talking about beating your, you know, your plow into a sword, or selling your cloak to buy a sword if you don't have a sword, things of that nature. Can you tell me some of the teachings that you have in your Torah that you believe are what give you the you know, this is your authority to own and possess and use weapons for your own self-preservation?
Yeah, sure. Well, the Bible does teach us in Exodus, in the Old Testament. The Judaism, we don't really learn the New Testament, but in the Old Testament, the 5 books of Moses, in the second book of Exodus, as the Jewish people were leaving Egypt and going into the land of Israel, the Bible, the Torah teaches us that they were armed, that there was a long wilderness, there was a long journey, and when they were able to repossess some of the Egyptians' possessions, they were armed as they were leaving Egypt to go into the land of Israel. So I use that as like a heritage to teach my fellow Jews and community members that we need to all be armed. And it's a heritage that goes back thousands of years.
Because if you weren't armed, that never would have happened, and Jews would still be slaves in Egypt.
Slaves of Egypt, and yes, that is true. But aside for the miraculous above nature actions that took place on a divine intervention perspective as well, but being armed is our personal responsibility to show divine intervention, to show God that, you know, we are serious about protecting our lives and preserving our freedoms.
Sure. Everybody needs to be.
But it's not a contradiction. Yeah, but it's not a contradiction to be armed and to rely on the divine things that work out from the one above.
Yeah, because the argument could be made that it's just a test, right?
Yes.
If you believe that that your God is the one dictating all things, then it wouldn't be a stretch to believe that he put you in this situation to test you.
Yes, absolutely.
I think you've answered as many questions as I have regarding why you know, an Orthodox Jew would be into firearm ownership, and why someone might not be into firearm ownership. I think that all people are more alike than they are different. I think that people.
Yes, that is true.
We like to fight a lot about our differences, but when you sit down and you have a conversation with someone, you see that 9 times out of 10, we're very much alike, and then it's that one thing that people end up bickering about.
We all like ice cream, you know. We can't deny we all like ice cream.
Yeah, I can't trust someone who doesn't like ice cream.
That's true. But yes, it's very important for people of all faiths, stripes, colors, races, and nationalities to just focus on our, you know, just simply being human beings, you know, is a common threshold that we all have and a common denominator. But yes, I agree. There's way too much focus on the non-similar aspects of our culture and our likings and what similarities we do have.
And I think that we can't make progress as a gun culture, furthering and advancing our rights, when we fight about the way we look, or we fight about the way we dress, or the way we talk. I think that while we're sitting there fighting amongst ourselves, we're not fighting the common enemy, and that enemy are the ones who are actively working to disarm us. And I don't talk about.
Yes. I know. There's so much internal conflict. Like what you said, there's so much internal conflict within our country between Democrats and Republicans, when we need to realize we have ISIS, Hamas, terrorists in the Middle East loving it. They love seeing the inter-conflict within our country. If we could just back aside and realize that the real threat is looking at us and laughing at us, it will change our perception so much.
Yeah, they don't need to destroy us if we're doing it for them.
Yes, exactly. You took those words out of my mouth. Exactly.
Yeah, I just wish more people understand. And that's part of the reason why the last few podcasts I've been doing have been, I talked with um, Marcus Darby on my last podcast, who is a fellow instructor, and he primarily works within the Black community, and the reason I've been doing these podcasts, specifically the last few, was to I'm trying to open people's perceptions, right? You know, some of the questions I asked you, some of the questions I asked him, I already knew the answer to, but I want other people to know the answer to. I want people to understand, like I said, I'm going to say it again, we're more alike than we are different. We have to set our differences aside so that we can advance our freedoms together, because it's going to take all of us to do it together,
Exactly.
There's just no way. There's just no way that we can, if we're focusing our energies on fighting ourselves, we can organize and have enough energy left over to attack them. And we've got the Illinois General Assembly is going to be reconvening in November. This year, because of COVID, has been thankfully slow on the legislative side, and it's really sad that we're in a situation where we're happy that the legislation isn't accomplishing anything, because when they accomplish something, it seems like they're actually taking rights away. So, I mean, that's just a sad statement that we're happy that they aren't doing anything. But the honest truth is, for a person such as myself who follows all these bills and amendments, everything very, very closely, it's been somewhat relaxing. But they do reconvene in November. And we have to be on guard. Right now we're fighting ourselves over all the current events. We're fighting ourselves over masks, for Christ's sakes. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So November's coming up. We need to recollect. We need to reorganize. We need to, proverbially sharpen our blades, so to speak, because, defending our rights is a battle. And we have to be prepared for it and be in our best game. Now, I don't suspect a lot will happen this November. Obviously, the bill to require fingerprints to have firearm owner identification card, the fix the void they're calling it, which would also increase the fees and lower the term. The ISP, the Illinois State Police, they can't even handle a 10-year renewal now, and they want to lower that to 5 years. I mean, but that's still on the table. And, it has a...
And they're mismanaging their money. There's tens of millions of dollars that's unaccounted for, missing.
Yeah, I believe it was something like $30 million that was swiped out of the weapons fund from the Illinois State Police, taken to use for general spending purposes. And then the Illinois State Police has the audacity to cry broke, saying they need to charge us more to license our freedoms back to us. We need to pay more for our freedoms because they can't manage the money we've already given them. We shouldn't have to give them 1 red cent for what is a God-given right, a natural-born right to be free from tyranny and oppression, a natural-born right to defend ourselves. They are charging us, and they are making us wait months and months and months to be able to defend ourselves. And now they want to charge us more. It's infuriating, and every single gun owner needs to stand up and tell their elected officials, use your First Amendment right to defend your Second Amendment, and tell your elected official that this is a bad proposal, this is a bad law, this cannot be. In fact, we need to do away with the firearm owner identification card. That is an infringement against our natural-born rights. It's just the firearm owner identification scheme has proven to be completely unsustainable this year. When the law says that they are going to get our permission slips out in 30 days, and it's taking sometimes 5, 6, 7 months for what should be 30 days. Even the Illinois State Police acknowledge, I don't believe this for a second, but they say their average is 51 days. I call BS on that. But I know
that's true. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you have students that have been waiting for, like you said, February concealed carry licenses were just getting approved now. So how many months is that? That's 6 months?
That's 6 months, yeah.
I mean, come on.
It's taking a while, yeah.
And the law says what?
Cards,
what does the law say for concealed carry?
Is 90 days with fingerprints, 120 without.
Correct. So we're talking 3-4 months, and they're doubling that.
They're doubling it. And the FOID card is 30 days. People are waiting 2-3 months for that at least also.
Yeah, I know people waiting 4 or 5 months, to be honest with you, for FOID cards.
Wow.
So here you've got, let's say I have a stalker and I decide, the police can't protect me. I've called the police. They said file a restraining order, and a restraining order isn't going to protect me. It's just a piece of paper. So I'm going to have to go get a gun. And now you're going to tell me that I have to wait 6-7 months before I can get that gun? I mean, and on top of it, the Illinois State Police are delaying purchases of guns 10-12 days.
Yes, I know. Background checks are taking like minimum a week, and then you have to wait 3 days on top of that week. Yeah, I know many people that are living downtown by all the riotous areas, and they want to go buy a gun, and they can't. They're waiting months.
If COVID taught us anything, that's you should have a few extra rolls of toilet paper, and if the riots of this summer have taught us anything, that is that you should have a few cases of ammunition somewhere in your basement in a waterproof container, and at least one rifle and one sidearm.
Absolutely.
And I shouldn't say now's the time, but when everything calms down is the time to stock up. It's the time to, get some training and to get serious, because it's inevitable, right? There will be another time. This is not unique. Everything is cyclical. It's going to come back, and, we should be prepared. Humans, I think, are very much reactive, not proactive. I think that is
true. Yes. We're not preppers at all, especially the more urban environment you live in, where we're not preppers at all.
Well, think about it. Preppers are looked on with a negative connotation. Even within the gun community, a lot of times people are looking at preppers as extremists and what are you afraid of? But it's okay. So I have a fire extinguisher because I don't want my house and my car to burn down. I have a flat tire because I don't want to have to drive home on a rim. I carry a gun to be able to protect myself in case anything happens. What's wrong with having a couple cases of toilet paper, maybe a case or two of bottled water? I've got a friend in Louisiana right now who they're getting hit with that hurricane. And, I told him, hey, you go now. I told him last night, go now, buy some water, make sure you've got gas for your generator. He said, well, I don't have a generator. I was like, get one just in case. It's better to have it than in need. And I'm sorry, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And he told me this morning that he couldn't find a generator anywhere. He went to every single store. So
Wow.
the point being, here you are, he has something potentially he might need to keep, his food refrigerated and whatnot. And he doesn't have, we live on electricity. And if you can't provide that temporary electricity, that's a problem. That's going to have a negative effect on your life. So it just makes sense just to have a few basic necessities on hand to kind of get over a hump, a temporary hurdle. But it is what it is. We, like I said, just to make that point, we're not proactive. We are reactive.
Yeah, not just the generators, like you said. You got to have a few cases of hollow point rounds and your rifle.
Okay, good point. Yeah. Why hollow points?
Very, very important. I mean, the thing that really scares me about the ammo shortage is people using full metal jacket ammo for their personal defense firearms instead of hollow points.
Right, and I cover this.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's extremely dangerous using full metal jackets on a civilian level. I mean, I tell all my students that when you go to the range, before you leave the range, if you have any full metal jackets in your magazines, you empty them out before you leave the range.
Right.
And yes, and not only that, when you go to the range, your magazines are empty, and then once you get into your booth, you take that 2 minutes, and then you fill up all your magazines with full metal jackets. I'll tell you something that an officer told me, that he was responding to a homicide in the real the crime-ridden areas of Chicago, the side or the far south side. And it was an apartment building that there was 2 apartments on each floor. There was a shooting in one apartment, and it was a full metal jacket round, and it went through about 6 layers of drywall.
Sure, easy.
Through the bedrooms. It went through the stairwell of the apartment building and hit a little girl in the kitchen of the apartment across the hall.
Jesus.
Yeah, so in most of the cases, when it's gang-related, the victim, in most cases, not all, but more than 50% of the cases, the victim is a bystander. Wrong place, wrong time.
Sure,
and it's because the thugs are using the less expensive, cheaper full metal jacket rounds that don't have that added stoppage technology that hollow points do.
And even if they do hit their target, the full metal jacket has a tendency to over-penetrate and leave an exit wound and keep on going. So even if they are, let's say someone in our situation, not a gangbanger, who's trying to defend themselves, a justified threat attacks them, and they shoot and they hit that threat and they stop the threat, the bullets keep on going, and you're responsible. Every single round that leaves the muzzle of your firearm has a lawyer attached, and you're responsible. Civil damage, you can be charged criminally if you hurt someone with
your name is on that bullet. I mean, what I do at my class when we go through knowing your target and what's beyond it, just imagine what's on the other side of the wall. A mother pushing a stroller. That's what I always say. A young mother pushing a baby carriage is on the other side of the wall. Just always have that in mind whenever you need to use your gun.
Absolutely. I think that's a good advice, a good mental picture, because no one wants to hurt a child or a mother. And so that's a great way of kind of putting a mental picture in someone's head to make them understand.
Yeah. So.
We're going to come up here on the end of the podcast. Tell me if you've got anything coming up. You've got a moment to promote anything, promote yourself again. How can people contact you? Why would people want to contact you? The floor is yours, my man.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I'm in the north side of Chicago. It's Jonathan Burstyn. You can look me up on Facebook, Chi-Defense, CHIDFENSE. For those that do go to places of houses of worship, I am part of a group. It's called CCL Shul Members, also on Facebook. Shul is synagogue in Hebrew. CCL Shul Members, where we do ongoing training of situational awareness and doing active shooter protocols. And I have classes like monthly, and we go out to the range and just really trying to promote safety and firearm freedoms within the Chicagoland area.
Excellent. Jonathan, thank you for being here on the Alpha Koncepts podcast with me. That's going to wrap it up for today. I want to thank everybody for listening. Jonathan, again, thank you for being here. If anybody listening to this wants to be a sponsor of the podcast, I want you to hit up Fire and Iron Media or contact me at alphaconcepts.com/podcast. Everybody stay tuned for future podcasts. If you have an idea for a podcast, again, definitely hit me up, alphaconcepts.com/podcast. If you have a question, anything, we're always in touch. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. Give it a thumbs up. Whatever platform you're on, make sure you give us some love.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Jonathan, thank you. Get back to work. As always, everybody, be armed, be trained, and be alpha.